Okay, a friend of mine recommended the movie The Torturer, which has a very, very small cast. I say small cast, it is three people. It is Nichelle Nichols, I think, and then you have the male lead and the female lead. Most of it takes place in two different locations. This is about a special enforcer Iraqi contractor who did interrogations. So you're going to tell us political implications in this movie. So it's him and what he's doing to interrogate a woman who may or may not know of a dirty bomb of the United States. And Nichelle Nichols essentially plays the person who's helping work through his post-traumatic stress syndrome. This movie's got lots of bizarre praise, and in some cases people have hated it because it's overly graphic. They do mention that he does definitely psychologically and physically abuse her. Using sanctioned and justified methods of specialized interrogation. You can call it torture, that's what most of the movie is about. He does things, like uncomfortable positions, he makes her cold, puts a bag over her head, does isolation, sexual humiliation. He does do a waterboarding scene. That's like this really intense waterboarding scene. I've actually seen more intense. He does put a bag on her head, flip her upside down, and pour water into it to simulate drowning. As well as he does also do different things where it's like, I'm going to do like light fear. I'm going to try to see if I can get her to fall in love with me to get her to divulge information. And from that aspect, keeping it to a three-person system, it works well. This does push, but you do find out really, really fast. The person who made this movie hates George Bush. That's why everywhere in the back when they're discussing torture is a picture of George Bush. They also rattle off, like executive codes that allow for the reinterpretation of the Geneva Convention, as well as, the following methods. 5 methods have been deemed suitable for interrogation during the War on Terror. Okay. So the male lead essentially thinks that what he's doing is wrong, because he feels some level of remorse for it later. He's like, my life is boring. Movies are boring. Music is boring. Sex is boring. My life is boring. He's like, from what I did there to what I'm doing now, it's all boring. People have mentioned that, I read some reviews and they're like, well, he makes him really feel sympathetic for him. You do feel some sympathy for him, that he was essentially, following orders. But at the same time, he's being constantly videotaped and monitored. He does do things that are unsavory to her, but fully within what is considered justifiable in the terms of interrogation. And Nichelle Nichols is more or less telling him what he's doing was fully justified. You didn't torture them. They brought this upon themselves. Why? They decided to attack us. We're doing what we can to save American lives. Which is the standard method of justification for what he's doing. And this movie is actually, it's a solid, from him, torturing and belittling her, to Nichelle Nichols kind of going, well, what you did was for this reason and these reasons, and it's okay. It's justified. Not that it's right, but that's justified. And trying to absolve him of the blame that he's currently feeling. And that's a great triangle that whole time. And then it takes a really bad turn. I recommend, there are 2 ways to watch this movie. You can watch the whole thing through, or when he goes, I have to go to the bathroom, just stop. Leave it there. Because that first hour is a pretty good psychological political thriller. With implications of, we're doing these horrible things to these people. We lost the moral high ground. If we're willing to torture people who are willing to torture us, we've already lost the war from an intellectual and a moral standpoint. Okay, I get that, I understand it, and it's done very well up to that point. Then he goes to the bathroom, and that's when this movie really takes a dive for the acting is solid, the script is crisp. Then all of a sudden he comes back and says, I'm going to call you doctor. You're my caseworker. You know, you're part of the company. All right. He comes out of the bathroom. She is now like, you know, zip tied in place, you know, with like a gag in her mouth. And he then begins to kind of, he's like, you know, waterboarding is the simulation of drowning and suffocation. And if we put a bag over you, puts a bag over her and starts asking her questions. Questions that, you know, you can't logically answer. And then zip ties the bag over her head and kind of leaves her to suffocate. So, if you felt bad for him, because what he was told to do up to that point, when he all of a sudden attacks Nichelle Nichols, you kind of go, oh, now I feel like he's just crazy? Because he believes that, you know, the process of torture, anything that leaves any sort of mental or emotional scars later on is torture. So while he was doing the torturing, he himself was being tortured because he'll never forget what he's done. Okay. That was fully established before he left to go to the bathroom and decided to somewhat torture Nichelle Nichols. He then leaves and gets into a car. It's when you realize there was a bomb that was planted. And he planted it. And he planted it essentially in the presidential parking garage to essentially help destroy the president's limo. He does tell Nichelle Nichols about it, but she's like, well, I know what I have to do. And then as he's out driving, he tells a person who is in a blanket next to him, who is the girl that apparently he beat, raped, and killed, how he smuggled her out of Iraq in a body bag to bring to America to release her so she can start a new life. That's when it went from being like really good and nice and, you know, crisp and good acting to just kind of, so you went with the bizarre sort of, oh, Stockholm syndrome, that's why you think you love me. You don't. Okay, but you cared enough to fake her death, get her out of a foreign country to American soil potentially, and then release her. You could have done that without torturing Nichelle Nichols. I guess he did that to her to simulate what he had to do to this poor woman who may or may not had actually had information that led to the dirty bomb attack. And then, of course, the bomb is dead and destroys the president's limo. So then the implications from that being, you know, they knew of the bomb and of its location and the vehicle it was in. They could have stopped it, but instead, she, being part of the government, allowed it to happen to reinstill the idea that the war on terror is entirely necessary and that whatever means necessary is fine. Could it have ended with him just being psychologically tortured? And you're like, could he have left at that point? Yeah, and he would have still been the sympathetic character, as opposed to sympathize with him. Then he attacks, I guess, one of his superiors to put her in that position. To be like, my actions were justified. Are they still justified now? And I'm doing them to you. Well, you justify what I'm doing to you because you believe these actions are justified. That's where it kind of went from being really good to kind of, you know, well, we gotta make the ending shocking. Well, up to that point in time, you know, you felt pity for the girl and him, but not Nichelle Nichols. The moment he decides to attack Nichelle Nichols and then plant a dirty bomb in his own country to try to show how come torture is wrong, but that allows her to justify her viewpoint of torturing people who may or may not be innocent. I think if you were to watch Buried and then Tortured, it would actually be probably unique contrast in styles, where one is someone who did nothing wrong but is being held hostage, and one was somebody who may have done nothing wrong but is being held hostage. So you have the two sides of the exact same coin, just One happy ending, other one not so happy ending. But it was good. Like I said, watch it till he goes to the bathroom. You can stop there. From the bathroom on, it really kind of hurts the movie. I know they tried to make it seem a lot more realistic, but the male lead's acting goes from being good to ridiculously over the top all of a sudden. Almost like a character of what he was earlier. So the first hour, good. Last 15 minutes, kind of ruined it for me. And that's the torture.